Welcome everyone to today's program, How to Be a Well-Rounded Dental School Applicant, sponsored by ASDA and the ADA. I'm Brooke Kachuris, ASDA's Membership Development Specialist here at the Central Office in Chicago. Before we begin, note that all attendees are muted so that we don't pick up any background noise during the program. During the presentation, you'll be able to ask questions of the presenters. You will notice a control panel on the right side of your screen. You can type into the question box at any time during the presentations, and at the end, we'll be answering as many questions as we can. We'll also provide contact information for the presenters if you would like to email them directly. I'd like to now introduce our moderator for tonight's webinar, Claire Kim. Claire is a member of ASDA's Pre-Dental Advisory Committee and the former president of Stony Brook University's Pre-Dental Chapter.
The Pre-Dental Advisory Committee has been working hard to bring ASDA Pre-Dental some great resources to kick off the membership year, which includes the Webinar Wednesdays, special mouthing off posts, Instagram challenges with prizes, and also Instagram takeovers, a new manual Dexterity Pinterest board, and a few surprises, including a brand new Dream School mentoring program. So enjoy the month with As a Smile, which is also this week's Instagram challenge. Now, I'd like to welcome tonight's speakers. So first off, we have Hillary. Hillary is a senior biochemistry student at Northeastern University, and she also serves ASDA as the chair of the Pre-Dental Advisory Committee and was the former chair of the District 1 PAC. Next is Katie. Katie is a fourth-year dental student at the NYU College of Dentistry and intends to pursue public health dentistry. She was a member of the inaugural cohort of students in the Dental Leaders in Global Public Health elective, which granted her the opportunity to participate in both an international and local outreach program at NYU. Next is Brian. Brian is a senior majoring in business operations management at Ohio State University. He is currently a president of the Ohio State ASDA Pre-Dental Chapter, and he wishes to impact the world of dentistry, whether that is through affordable care, maintaining an approachable and kind demeanor, or offering services to underserved populations. He has a passion to help others understand more about the career and assist them on their journeys to dental school. And lastly, we have Jack. Jack is a third-year dental student at the Stony Brook Dental Medicine and pursuing a dual degree in public health and business administration. He is a U.S. Navy Health Professions Scholarship recipient and currently an ASDA president at Stony Brook Chapter, and he is also a class president. So tonight's programs comes from you and your Facebook and Instagram followers, and ASDA members have been direct messaging and posting their questions and comments on how to be a well-rounded dental school applicant. We'll dig into answers with data points, resources, and experiences. So to start off, question 1. When and how did your undergraduate involvement in dentistry get started? Katie, do you have any thoughts?
For me, I started, I knew I wanted to go to dental school very early on. So I started my freshman year. I started very simple, start with what you know. So I inquired with my personal dentist and my orthodontist and started shadowing them. And then kind of took advantage of different opportunities at my school. I went to a very small school, so we did not have a pre-dental chapter, but we did have a biology honor society that I got involved in, as well as we had a global brigades chapter. So I did get to go to Honduras and do the medical dental brigade as a first year student. I did that again in my senior year. And then just kind of, we had a health internship that I did in my junior and my senior year, shadowing local dentists, and I shadowed a periodontist. So that's kind of how I kind of got started with dentistry. I did other health related things too. I volunteered. I was a Spanish major, so I volunteered at a local clinic translating between the doctors and the patients. So that's what I did.
Thank you, Katie. And Jack and Hillary and Brian, do you have anything to add?
I went to a larger school. I go to Ohio State. So I think taking advantage of the pre-dental club, which is very large at my school, as well as the ASDA chapter through the resources that it offered, was a great opportunity for me to get involved in dentistry. So I think if you are on that bigger school end, either join a pre-dental club or you can establish one of your own as well. So that's kind of my advice for getting involved in undergraduate dentistry.
Great, thank you, Katie and Brian. And moving on to question 2. What leadership experiences have you had? Share one important quality of a good leader. Hillary, could you talk about that a little bit?
Hillary, you're muted.
Okay, are we good? All right, so before I go into detail about my own personal leadership experiences, I just want to say that to those of you in the audience who don't have like official leadership titles or like official leadership positions, like don't be discouraged because you don't really need a title to be a leader. And so when I first started college, I was involved with Jumpstart, which was an organization focused on delivering like good quality education to young children who lived in underserved populations. And while I wasn't like the team leader for my group, I was able to step up my game and plan lessons for our volunteering shifts and also really be involved with this. So I was a leader in that sense, in the sense that like I was still taking initiative, still like going above and beyond in my role, even though I like didn't have an official title beyond like being a Jumpstart volunteer. However, like as college progressed, I became more involved with different organizations on campus. And one of the things that I joined was ASDA. And I became involved with ASDA through my district. At the end of my freshman year, that was the first time that District 1 wanted to involve pre-dental students in their District 1 leadership. So they sent out a bunch of applications. I applied and I got on the committee to be a committee member. So during my time serving District 1 on the committee member, we really created like the foundation in terms of a lot of the annual initiatives that we do within our district, such as like the winter break shadowing program, an annual District 1 webinar, and planning the pre-dental track of the District 1 leadership conference. And fast forward, I became the chair of the District 1 pre-dental advisory committee, which really got me involved with ASDA even more. And now currently I serve as the chair of the National Pre-dental Advisory Committee. So my career with ASDA really started off like locally within my district. And then non-pre-dental related, other things that I did during my undergrad that could be considered leadership included like being the TA for a couple of the freshman introductory college classes. So I really got to mentor a lot of students through these experiences.
Thank you so much, Hillary, for the detailed answers. Is there anyone else who wants to add on to this?
I think just to answer the second part of the question about qualities of a good leader, I think one is being passionate, and another one is, you know, being a good listener and being able to surround yourself with people that have strengths that are your weaknesses.
I can agree more, Katie. Good points. Thank you. So moving on, question 3. What are the best tips you have for studying for the DT, and any specific advice on studying for the DAT? Brian, since you're the current pre-dental president, would you like to talk about it a little bit?
Sure, of course. So my biggest thing with the DAT is when you start, you have to have that confidence and believe in yourself that you're capable of doing it. Because I think at the very beginning, it's information overload. You have these giant biology sections to read. There's these PAT questions, like what even is top front end? I still don't really know that well. And I think it's easy to get frustrated. So like week 3, I wasn't making solid progress. And I was getting upset with myself because I thought I should be ahead at this point. My test is in like 5 weeks. What's going on? And mentally, you need to prepare yourself that that's okay, that you're going to make a dent, you're going to keep going, and do not get frustrated because you get questions wrong. Learn from your mistakes and tackle it that way. In addition, find the resources that work best for you. because there's so many great options out there and everyone is different in their approach. So don't think that one way is the correct way to study for the DAT. And also make it a priority. So if you can cut back on work or on other involvements that semester, or I took mine in the summer, so I was lucky enough not to work, or if you're taking it with classes, try not to load up your semester because the DAT is a huge part of your application. So do what you can to make that your number one priority in like your kind of academic life, and be conscious that it matters a lot. In addition, if you're younger, really try to pay attention to those prereq classes. And we all cram. I'm very guilty myself, but I learned when I was studying for the DAT, the classes that I didn't cram for and that I took the time to really understand, I already knew that material from those classes, whether it was microbiology or physiology, because I paid attention. And Gen Chem, something I kind of crammed, I was a little more behind. So if you're younger, I know that sounds difficult, but try to channel that. And also be aware that the DAT is kind of a speed test. So the PAT, the reading, and the QR, that's the math, it's not like a long amount of time. So if you're someone who takes a little more time on tests, try to condition yourself to be a quicker reader, problem solver, everything like that, because that'll really help you on the DAT. In addition, my little secret that I used was this timer method. So oftentimes people will go in the library for like 5 hours, but they'll study for 2, right? We're all guilty. So I take a timer and set it for an hour at a time. And if I ever take a break to go to the bathroom or like call my mom or talk to a friend, I hit pause. And I keep track of how many hours I actually study. And that way you stay motivated and you keep an accurate amount of what you're doing. So if you're in the library for 5 hours and you studied for 2, maybe you'll realize like I got to get it together. Let's be more productive with my time. So that's kind of like the mental aspect of it, in addition to like those science courses, the reading, the math, the PAT, the speed. But most of all, stay motivated, find a support system. Let your friends and family know that you're going to be busy during that time for the DAT. And it's not going to be the most fun time of your life, but if you have a support system with your friends, maybe they'll study with you, have a DAT friend, someone studying for the LSAT, something like that, and have confidence in yourself that you have the ability to discipline yourself to study, and be confident in yourself that you can show up to that test and kill it, because you have to trust in yourself and the studying that you've done to prepare for it. And that's like the best advice from like a mental aspect, is to go in there and say you're ready and you're going to do a great job on it. So that's kind of my DAT summarization.
Thank you, Brian. You really covered it all. Hillary, do you have anything to add on to that as well?
Something that I liked what Brian said was learn from your mistakes. So one thing that I realized when I was studying for my DAT was that I was like doing a bunch of practice questions, but I never really took the time and like went back through like every single like question and every single answer that went with that question, and like to really understand like everything, like the concepts behind like that question. Because I would like keep on doing like questions and like keep on getting like similar things wrong. And that's when I realized that like I wasn't actively learning. I was passive about the learning process. I was just trying to like just look at the words and like somehow like formulate like cohesive thoughts in my head. But that's not gonna cut it for the actual DAT. Like for the DAT, it's like I think 5 hours. You're gonna go in and you have to like know your stuff. Like the questions, you have to answer them like in a relatively fast like time frame. So one thing, like a huge tip I would say to like all you future test takers is really take the time and like be active about your studying. Because when you start off, like it might seem like the amount of information that you have to learn is like overwhelming, and it is. But if you like really take the time to like deeply learn all the information like from the beginning, like even though it might seem like you're making like really, really, really slow progress, like you're making progress, and that's what counts.
Thank you, Katie. So moving on to question 4, share a unique dental experience from your undergraduate years. So for this question, I think I can share my own experience. Hello, everybody. Okay, so I was fortunate enough to start being a research assistant beginning of junior year, which was last year, at the closest dental school, which was the Stony Brook Dental Medicine, where Jack goes to. And my research topic was about digital dentistry, which is becoming such a big thing right now, since that's where the future of the dentistry is going to. And I was able to do educational research, which was different from heavily bio-focused research. And I was able to be part of the dental morphology class of the D1s at the dental school. And I was able to help and guide D1s on how to use the CAD/CAM program, and also got a chance to present my poster at the dental school research symposiums. And this year I was fortunate enough to work continuing my research and to participate in making instructional videos on the CAD/CAM for the dental morphology course for the D1s. And I'm planning on attending a DIA conference next March with my poster. So the reason why I'm sharing this is because it was just something that I never thought about that this research is going to get me into. It's just something that I never grasped, that as an undergraduate student, you are capable of doing this, or even participating, or even being as part of the dental students class. And, you know, I just want you to encourage all of you guys that you should try new things, and anything that's dentistry related. You'll never know how it's going to lead on to the next one, or how it's going to open up in your career in dentistry path. So I just wanted to throw it out there as my unique experience as undergraduate years. Is anyone of you want to add to that, or any experiences that you guys had?
I encourage you to try, you know, be creative, think outside the box, and try and, you know, combine your passions to have a unique experience. For me, as a language major, I had to study abroad. And so I worked with my school to find a program that combined both my passion for dentistry and health as well as the Spanish language. So I traveled to South America, to Bolivia, Argentina, and Ecuador, and through a program called Children Family Health International, and got to work in, you know, hospitals and dental clinics. So, you know, find something, you know, if you have a passion for, you know, whatever it is, try and find ways to, you know, combine them, and find, you know, don't be afraid to find a new path, and, you know, find a program out there that maybe your school, it's not on their radar.
Thank you, Katie. Really good points for that as well. All right, moving on. Question 5. Share your tips on how to manage time handling academic work and extracurricular activities. Jack, you seem to manage a lot of things, and would you like to lead us on with that question?
Definitely. So I think the biggest thing is knowing yourself and knowing what your limits are. For me personally, I like to stay involved in a lot of things, because then I know that I have to, you know, be on top of all those things and manage my time well effectively to ensure that I'm doing everything to the best of my ability, while at the same time getting everything done that I need to. So whether it means for you, you know, using a planner or a scheduler or a calendar or a list or whatever it might be, I think that's really important. And then with that, knowing what your limits are. So it's always great, you know, to be involved in a lot of things. But as a pre-dental student, you have to remember that grades and, you know, studying for the DAT and getting into dental school, which is obviously your end goal as an undergraduate in pre-dental, is what you're working towards. So you never want to compromise, you know, your educational and your curriculars for, you know, your grades or whatnot in the end. So definitely know yourself, know your strengths and your limitations. Do things that you're passionate about. Don't just become involved in something or take on a leadership role because you think it'll look good, because then you're not going to really enjoy it, and that's going to show in, you know, how you perform in that role, and it's also going to show in how you know, talk about that role or experience when you're writing about it on a CV or in an application, or, you know, in an interview question or whatnot. So do things you're passionate about, because then you'll have a better time doing those things, and it won't feel like a job, or won't feel like a leadership role. It'll feel like, you know, just something you really enjoyed with and passionate about doing. And with that, know your limitations so that you don't take on too many things at once, so you don't burn out, because it's really easy to burn out and get, you know, overstressed with everything that's going on in life, on top of all the other educational and extracurricular things that we like to take on. So I think combining, you know, good organizational skills with knowing your limitations and, you know, doing things you're really passionate about, having those 3 pillars in hand, make all these extracurriculars and time management skills possible for myself, and I think possible for everybody else as well.
Great answers. Thank you, Jack. So moving on to question 6. How do you practice manual dexterity skills? And can everyone answer shortly to this question? Starting off with Katie.
I didn't, to be honest, I didn't do a whole lot to practice manual dexterity. In that the application, I really kind of had to think outside the box. And what I did learn to knit, which is a little bit of manual dexterity. And I was in a sorority and we made like paddles, and I did these like very intricate little patterns with paper and things. So I used like tweezers. But other than that, I honestly did not do a whole lot. So hand skills definitely was a challenge for me going into dental school, but you practice a lot, and you get the hang of it.
Anyone want to add on to this?
Sure. I did something kind of unique. I took like an art class, a pottery class in high school, and I continued that through college. So like a Columbus Community Center offered like a really cheap pottery and clay class, so you could use your hand skills and freehand different objects. And that was a fun little aspect I took because it not only took off my stress, it was like a $2 class that you make art at once a week for 2 hours, but it also adds your manual dexterity skills. And I think it was like a good break from the world and to kind of sit there and focus on hand skills. So that was like a fun way that I ended up practicing. So
Jack and Hillary?
I would say, going off of that, don't stress about, worrying if you have something that, counts as manual dexterity or not, because there's probably just little things in your life that you do or hobbies that you have on a day-to-day basis that you don't realize that could count as manual dexterity. For me, I picked up sewing when I was in high school and kind of continued it into undergrad. So I talked about that on my application. I had friends who were really good at card tricks, or really good with a Rubik's Cube, made model airplanes or boats or whatnot. So there's all these different things that you might have interests in or passions about, that you don't realize that you're using your hands and you're coordinating and picking up your manual dexterity skills, but you are. Maybe you played an instrument growing up, like the piano or saxophone, where you really need to be able to use your fingers and your hands a lot and coordinate it to do a task. Just think about all those other things that you have, involved with your life and through extracurriculars that you might be able to tie into the manual dexterity section.
And then for me, I work in a research lab, so there's a lot of like pipetting involved, like working with like very small instruments. Another thing that I did a couple of years ago was take an art class, a painting class at my local museum. So with that, like I got to use my hands a lot. It was like super hands-on.
Thank you everyone for your answers. Moving on to next question. So what brought you to ASDA, and what is the most valuable part of your membership? Anyone want to start with that?
I'll start. So I got pretty involved with ASDA as a pre-dental. I joined as a freshman undergrad, and I've been a member ever since. Similar to Hillary and yourself, Claire, I served on the ASDA pre-dental advisory committee my senior year of undergrad, and now I'm pretty involved with my chapter. I'm also pretty involved at the district level, and I've done a few things at the national level as well. I'm planning to stay involved going into my 4th year next year. So I guess what really brought me into ASDA was that it's a really strong foundation for organized dentistry, and it's a cohort of dental students and pre-dental students who are all passionate about these same things and issues that are facing us as dental students and that are facing the field of dentistry right now. And seeing those students who are leaders and are passionate about all these different items, coming together at meetings, like NLC and annual session, to collaborate with one another and work on how we can fight to make the future of dentistry a better and brighter one for all of us, is what inspired me to want to get more involved, and to network with them and to see how my voice and my thoughts and ideas could potentially play a part in the future as well. And I think personally for me, the most valuable part of my membership is that network of friends and leaders I've been able to make. It's some of the more intangible items that you get out of being a member of ASDA are some of the best ones in my opinion, in addition to all the tangible ones as well. And I think the network of friends I've made and the leadership skills that I've been able to acquire as a result of my membership have really laid a groundwork for a bright future for myself.
Brian, Katie?
So I kind of found ASDA in a very weird way. I think I got an email actually from Kaplan that says, "Are you an ASDA member? Because you could get a discount for your DAT prep." And I was like, well, what is ASDA? And so went online and found out what the American Student Dental Association was. So as being at a school that didn't have a pre-dental outlet, I was really excited to find that there was an organization that was focused and brought a bunch of pre-dental and dental students together without having to physically be together. So that's how I started. I joined, I think, as a sophomore in undergrad, and then have continued my membership. And I've, when I got into dental school, I got involved in leadership, and now I have a national position. But I think as a pre-dental, the most valuable aspects of membership were all the resources, especially, we had ASDA News and Mouthing Off in the Mouth magazine. Now we have Contour, and we still have the Mouthing Off blog. And just reading different articles and stories really kind of kept me motivated while I was, writing my personal statement and just feeling very frustrated. I'd read those things and be like, reinvigorated about dentistry and refocused. And then a lot of the topics that I was learning about the field of dentistry from those articles paid off during the interview process, when they were like, well, what, in your opinion, what are 3 hot button topics in dentistry currently, or challenges that dentists are facing? And because of the articles that I read through all these resources, it was an easy question to answer. So that was really valuable for me as a pre-dental.
Thank you, Katie. And Brian, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, I found out about ASDA we have a pre-dental day at our university every single year through the dental school. And that was a really cool opportunity as a sophomore and a freshman who was a pre-dental, because I think the great part about ASDA is that they really care about pre-dental students. It's not just for dentists or dental students, it's everyone involved. And that's really great as a student who's a sophomore in college, because you kind of feel like you're not worthy quite yet. And as Katie said, the resources are phenomenal. There's a book they send out to every ASDA member with the GPA, DAT, letters of rec, tuition, location of every dental school. And that is awesome for determining what you want to apply to, where you want to visit, and all those factors, as well as webinars like these and access to so many things that connect you to the profession of dentistry is a really great opportunity for young students to connect to the passion that is dentistry without being in dental school yet. So I think that's been the most valuable part of my membership.
Thank you, everybody. And now we will be open for live questions. We will do our best to answer all questions, but if we don't get to yours, you can email it to the presenters.
All right, thank you, everyone. Remember that you have the question box off to the side. You can put in a question anytime you think of one throughout this process. Our first question is, how much of an impact does research have on the application?
I would say research. I didn't do any research. I hate research personally. So I had no research involved. If it's something you're passionate about and you want to pursue, go for it. But if it's not a deal breaker.
Yeah, there's definitely, in addition to, your extracurriculars, there's a section on the application where you have the opportunity to list any research, activities or events you were, that you took part of and that you participated in. So if you have something to put there, then, definitely looks great. But like Katie was saying, if you're going to do research, make sure it's something that you're passionate about. Don't feel like you just have to do research to do it and put it on your application, because you're not going to enjoy it. And then if you're asked about it on an interview, you'll come off probably sounding ingenuine, or the interviewer will be able to tell you either don't know a lot about it or didn't really like to do what you did. So you could do any kind of research. It doesn't have to be related to dentistry. It doesn't necessarily have to be related to biology or the hard sciences. You could do a research relating to psychology or sociology or art or music. Do something that you're interested in and do research about it. And the fact that you did research and that you took the time to commit to an extra level and higher level of learning and thinking outside of the classroom is what really will speak volumes when you're applying. And that's what's going to matter more when you put that on your application.
For sure. And to go off of that, I think if you're thinking about doing research, I would encourage you to look into it, even if you don't know whether you'll like it or not. Because I think regardless of whether you enjoy it or you don't enjoy it, research, you can learn a lot of valuable skills like critical thinking, how to present information in a way that other people who are not familiar with your field can learn. You learn how to be patient, because sometimes depending on the research that you do, results don't come out immediately, and you have to continually repeat experiments or do things over and over again. So I do think that if you're like looking to learn like some valuable like life lessons that you can like then apply to other areas of your life, like research would be a great activity for that.
And then just to echo Katie, I have a weird hatred for research too. I never had a desire to do it, and I have 0 on my application, and it hasn't, like, I've never been worried about it. So going along with them, it's not something to be afraid about not having. So.
Great. Next question. Do you have any specific interview tips?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing sorry, Katie. I think the biggest thing when you're interviewing is to always, be yourself and, take the time to answer any questions that you might, be asked. It's never a bad thing to pause and wait a second to compose your thoughts, so you don't come off sounding, jumbled or, not genuine in your answer. But always just be yourself, stay true to yourself, and then with that, know your application. Because more than likely most schools every school has different interview tactics, and I'd encourage you to look up, and ask, students who maybe attend there what the interview is like beforehand. But, know your application, because anything that's on your application is always fair game for them to ask you about. So make sure that you review your application and any supplemental applications you might have submitted to that school beforehand so that you know it really well. Take the time to answer your questions and be yourself. And then normally there's always an opportunity to ask students questions during interviews, and that normally doesn't play a role or a factor into how they grade or respond to you as an interviewee. So never be scared to ask students questions you might not want to ask faculty who's interviewing you, because they'll give you a more honest answer about something relating to the school life.
Another tip for you pre-dentals is that right now the Facebook community is like really active. If you join, I forget what the exact name of the Facebook group, but there's like a dental school like interview like prep group, and the people who are part of that group, like they post like when they have like certain interviews at like different schools and like what to look for, stuff like that. So there's definitely like a community of like people who are really open to like sharing their interview experiences online.
Going off of what has been said, like definitely prepare. I believe it's University of Pennsylvania. They have a list of about 60 plus questions that are typically asked about at dental school interviews. Take a look at those types of questions. At least think about them. Think about how you would respond. You don't want to go off on this tangent. You want to keep your answers meaningful and concise, as well as there are a lot of different ways in which interviews are structured. NYU, we do a one-on-one interview with one faculty member. When I interviewed at University of Michigan, they do MMI, which is multiple mini interviews. I had 20 different interviews that lasted about 2 to 3 minutes, and you switch every minute. And other schools do like group interviews where you have to do group activities and they watch you. So I would just say the schools you get interviews at prepare and know what is the style of interview that they have and prepare accordingly and practice.
The only thing I would add on to all those great pieces of advice would be, I know posture is a big factor as well. So how you carry yourself, how you hold yourself up, your handshake, and how you approach a person. So keep that in mind when you're making that entrance and kind of establishing your presence in the seat. So
another thing another thing about establishing like your presence is make sure that you like wear professional clothing. I think that most people usually like invest in a suit because you want to look professional. You want to like have that first great impression with whoever is interviewing you.
Okay, what are the pros and cons of a gap year?
I did a gap year. So I personally was very burnt out coming out of undergrad. So having a gap year was, for me, having a time to just, do some self-care. And I was studying abroad as part of my extra semester or extra gap year. So, do something productive with your time, and it can be just a refreshing experience. Doing work or something is just using different skills to then kind of go into dental school mentally prepared. Going off of that though, being out of school for a year, getting back into school, retraining yourself and going into that study mode and managing your time, it kind of, you have to get back into the swing of things. But a year is not actually that long. It goes really fast. So you feel like you just left undergrad, even though you were off for a year.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I think, it depends on who you are. You have to know yourself. I kind of keep saying that, but I think it relates to a lot of different facets of life and also you as a person. So if you feel like you're the kind of person who, is really burnt out, like Katie said, or, needs more time to kind of develop yourself as an applicant or do more things to make your application stronger, then, a gap year is definitely beneficial for you. Just make sure that if you are going to take a gap year, like Katie was saying, that you're using that time wisely and to effectively, do things that you'll be able to show and speak to on your application or in an interview. For myself personally, I didn't take a gap year just because I was on track and felt motivated enough to continue right on to dental school. Because I felt for myself that if I took a gap year, if I wasn't in another, educational program or setting, I would have got out of the swing of things, and then it might have been harder for me to get back into, studying and getting into that, educational coursework and classroom setting again. But I don't think the pathway to dental school right now is traditional. The average age of a student when entering isn't always, the 22-year-old who just graduated from college. There are people who, have gone out into the work field and done, something maybe in the business field, or who did another master's program, who, started a family and now are, coming back to develop their career and what they want to do. So there is no one right way to dental school. It's all about, what your life presents you with and how you're going to most effectively get there. But just make sure that you always make sure to keep the end goal in mind of dental school if that's what you really want to do.
And going off of what Jack said, I personally don't think that there's like any cons to a gap year. I think that the gap year is like really a good opportunity for you to develop yourself in other ways that you probably like didn't invest that much time in, like during your undergrad when you were like busy trying to like fulfill your requirements for dental school. So I'm personally going to take a gap year next year. I think that it's healthy for my mindset to like take a break from studying, and I'm actually looking forward to working like a full-time job, like making some money, paying off some of my undergrad loans before I go into dental school with like even more debt. But yeah.
Okay, this question specifically is for Hillary. Could you explain more about winter break shadowing programs, and do other schools have it? What is the application timeline like?
So District 1, they usually roll out their winter break shadowing program, I think like starting, I think they already sent out an email, but basically people in the New England area, we try to connect pre-dental students with a doctor or a dentist within like their local region so that they can personally set up like a day to shadow that dentist during their own break. Applications, I believe, have already been sent, but if you email me, I can try to resend that to you because I don't think they've started matching. They usually like to say like winter break shadowing program because normally students have more time during their winter break from like December to like the end of January to shadow a dentist. However, students who are part of this program, usually they prolong their relationship with that dentist and they continue to shadow that dentist whenever both parties have time.
Great. Now this next one is also about shadowing. It's specifically for Katie. What holds more weight, shadowing or volunteering? And did global bridges count as volunteering or shadowing?
I kind of did it as both because with the Global Brigades program, I was observing and assisting dentists. So I did include those hours as hours of shadowing. But then I also listed it on my resume, it was listed under CV, like a volunteer experience. So I think you can kind of double dip in a sense. what was the other part of the question, Brooke?
It was saying, which holds more weight, shadowing or volunteering? And what you did it count as volunteering or shadowing?
Yeah, so as far as what counts like more weight, I think part of it depends on the dental school. Some dental schools have a bare minimum number of shadowing hours they want you to do. I would say shoot for a minimum of 100. As someone pipe in if you think that's too much, but I had about 150 because I worked in private office too during my gap year. So I don't think one weighs more than dental schools definitely want to see that you have gotten yourself into an office and you know what the life of a dentist is like. Because so often students, get into dental school and they realize they don't like it. And dental schools don't want those types of people to come into dentistry and like think of it's one way and then get in there and then it's not what they expected. So I do think that shadowing is definitely very important to confirm that this is what you want to do. But if you're volunteering at like Missions of Mercy, which is a dental event, then that also shows your dedication and interest of the profession as well. So
I think this is a good question for everyone. How many schools did you, this is a three-parter. How many schools did you apply to? How many did you hear back from? And how did you juggle the interviews? Let's start with Jack.
Sure. So I applied to 11 schools. I heard back from 8 of them. And then in terms of how I decided which ones to go to and how I juggled it all, if it was before December 1st and before I heard back from or heard decisions from anywhere, I definitely, took them up and went there to interview. It was obviously hard to manage that because I was still an undergrad, so with my classes and exam schedule and whatnot, but I always made sure that at the beginning of that semester when I was applying, I told my professors that I was applying and that I might need to take some time off, to travel for interviews and whatnot, and they were all pretty understanding of that fact. So anyone's before December 1st and before I heard decisions from schools, I definitely went to. And, schools are pretty, knowing that you're obviously not just applying to their school, more than likely you're applying to other schools. So when they call you or email you to set up an interview, if you have to, space it out a little bit more from what time that they're giving you, or if you have to try and coordinate it with another school in the area so that, you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone and not, spending a lot of money on traveling or taking too much time with the school, then they're more than likely willing to work with you to do that. After December 1st and after I started to hear back from some schools, I took interviews, in strides and, really had to consider, one, if it was a program that I was really passionate about and really wanted to pursue, because I didn't want to take a spot or an interview away from somebody who maybe didn't get one yet or who really wanted to go to that school when I already knew that I was accepted to a school that I wanted to go to. There was one program though that did reach out to me after the December 1st date that I did decide to take up on the interview just because it was a program that I didn't really expect to hear back from and I was really interested in. And it was a good experience because, I got to still see that program and consider it, but that's kind of my path and how I tackled the interview process.
Katie, how about you?
So I applied to 9 schools. I interviewed at 4. And so for me, I was interviewing and applied during my gap year. And I was abroad in the fall of the application cycle. So both Marquette University and NYU got back to me and asked to interview. And I said, thank you so much. The only problem is I'm in Ecuador right now. NYU was like, oh my God, that's awesome, because they're on a rolling basis because our class is so large. They interview all the way through like March or April. So it was no problem for them. They're just like, it's fine. Email us when you get back and, we'll figure out a date for you to come. Marquette, however, they're very strict. Their goal is to fill their class by December 1. So they're like, these are our 4 interview dates. And if you can't make it, then that's just too bad. And you can't Skype in because they had like I said, they did like group interviews and then you had like stations you had to go to. So I had to have that difficult conversation with my parents because it was a school I was highly interested in. And so I had to pay for a $600 plane ticket to come back from Ecuador, interview, and then fly back to finish my program. So that was a very expensive interview, for sure. But for me, it was one of my top schools. So we took that financial investment. So it's certainly something to consider. And then the other schools, their interviews happened to be like when I got back. But like I got an interview from Michigan, and then after that one was already scheduled, I got an interview date from U of I, and it technically was like my train to Michigan was already leaving on that day, and they're like, well, we can't. U of I said we can't reschedule, so then I had to just again reschedule my train ticket. So I literally had to bring a suitcase to my U of I interview, and after I was done, hop on a train and go to Michigan. So luckily for me, it was my gap year, so I wasn't in school. At that time, I hadn't yet gotten a job, so it was like, it wasn't that an issue of scheduling. It was just a little chaotic, and luckily so that was my experience.
So I applied to 6 schools. I'm going through that right now, actually. And I only applied to schools that I thought I could see myself attending. And also, like those supplemental questions, I wanted to do no more than I had to be totally honest, because some schools require extra essays. And so I kind of thought I would focus on the schools that I really wanted to go to. So I have an interview, actually, my first one's in 2 days, and I scheduled it over fall break. So that way I could avoid that school issue. So some schools are nice enough, like Marquette, to give you a list of dates, and I chose the one that was most convenient for myself. Now, the other 2 schools that I'm interviewing at are 2 days apart, and they both gave me the date. So the one's on a Saturday, which is nice. It's my own university. It's Ohio State, so I don't have to worry about travel or missing school. But Pittsburgh is on a Monday, and so I just had a conversation with my teachers already and said, this is what I'm doing. They're okay with it. Obviously, they understand. And it's one of those things where, yes, school's important and you shouldn't miss class. But at this point in your life, or at least in my life, the interview process is more important than like missing 2 lectures, if that makes sense. So you kind of have to weigh what's going to matter 4 years from now versus what's going to matter in the moment. So I kind of just like that decision of obviously an interview is more important than like going to an operations lecture. So take that into consideration when deciding if you can like miss class, or if you can schedule it over a break like I did for 2 days from now. So
and also just know that you're not the first person to apply to a graduate school and have to go on interviews. So just as long as you're communicating with your professors in adequate amount of time, like if it's on an exam day, at least in my experience, my undergraduate was very flexible and could reschedule and do makeup tests. But just know that you're not the first. So hopefully you have professors that are understanding and know that this is just part of being a senior in college.
All right, next question. What year did you take physics?
So I am actually taking physics right now. I'm a senior. So I took physics 1, I believe, last year. And then this year I'm finishing up with physics 2. So junior, senior.
Jack? Or Brian, whichever.
I took physics in high school, senior year of high school. So I took a very different approach. I took physics my freshman year of college because I had just taken it in high school and thought I had a good knowledge of it. And so I was kind of untraditional in that aspect of taking it right away. It's not on the DAT, so like it didn't really matter for that sake. But I was like, you know what? I know it now. I'm going to take it now and get it over with. So.
I was like Hillary. I did it the spring of my junior year and fall of my senior year, which was untraditional from my classmates and my friends in undergrad because a lot of them did it throughout junior year. But just because of what other classes I was taking for my major and my minor, in terms of staying on track with everything to graduate on time, I decided to do it during the spring of junior year and the fall of senior year. But I'd say typically most students take it probably in junior year.
So I was a language major, so I didn't have time to fit it into my regular academic schedule. So I took it physics 1 as a summer class between my freshman and sophomore year. And then I took physics 2 between my sophomore and junior year.
How should you prepare for the personal statement on the application?
I guess I'll start. I think that's a very personal process. I would say start early. For me, I had a committee letter, so we actually had to start writing ours in January or February before we wanted our letters written. And then by the time I submitted in like August, I had gone through I think 8 drafts. Depending on your writing style, I think it kind of dictates your process. For me, I just kind of thought about why am I passionate about dentistry, kind of word vomited on a page and then kind of tried to go back and organize it. But I think, depending on how you approach any other kind of writing, will kind of dictate your process. But definitely it's a time for reflection and, really looking into yourself and why do I want to do this so badly? Or how did I get to dentistry?
Yeah, as Katie said, oh, go ahead, Jack.
That's okay, Brian, you go first.
Okay. As Katie said, start early because the personal statement is not something that you can rush. You can't cram a statement like that because it's not going to be authentic. And my strategy was to actually talk to my really close friends and family because they have a good idea of who you are and they kind of know what you represent as a person through dentistry, etc. So I wrote out ideas and then showed it to my friends and my mom and dad, and they kind of gave me feedback on well, this sounds like you. What about this characteristic of yourself? So definitely talk about the people around you in your life because they know you probably better than yourself. So.
Yeah, I think going off of both what Katie and Brian said, definitely start early, but also try and just think about, why you really want to do this. Think about why you want to do dentistry and pick that as your profession and go to dental school. It's hard to, write something that's unique and new and different because obviously there's been many people who have applied before you and they've all written personal statements as well. But you always want to try and avoid those cliche statements and just think about who you are and, why this is your path and why this is, the profession that you want to pursue. And with that, I know for myself personally, I like to write, but I don't like other people to read, critique my writing. But I think the personal statement is something that you definitely need to get others, to read and give you feedback on and take that seriously. So whether it's, a parent, a sibling, a friend, a professor, or a combination of those, or anybody else, definitely get a couple different people to, read that over, give you some feedback, and take it seriously. Make modifications and edits that you think you need to. While maybe staying true to what you think is best for yourself and for the personal statement. But definitely having a second set of eyes look over it never hurts because you want someone else to read it over before you send it out to all these schools that are going to be reading it.
This is a little bit of a two-parter. Does working a paid position in a dental office count for shadowing if you're assisting the dentist? And how do you document this work as a dental assistant on your resume or application?
So I did work as a dental assistant and I was paid. So I did count it as shadowing hours. But then you also on the ADSAS, if it hasn't changed since I applied, you can upload your CV and resume. And so I had it under the title of job experience. And so I wrote the clinic's name and then bulleted my responsibilities, assisted dentist in all restorative procedures, poured up models for all patients, things like that. So that's how I counted it because I was in an office, I was shadowing and learning, but then it was also a job experience. So that's kind of how there's one spot on the application where you list all your shadowing hours, where you did it and how many hours, but then there's also a place for you to upload your actual resume or CV.
All right, what is the fastest you might hear back on an interview?
I think it really depends on the school. I know the application always opens June 1st, and most people want to submit their applications as early as possible, but you just have to be mindful of the fact that even if you were to submit your application, June 1st or that first week of June, ADSAS sends their applications out in waves, and they do the first wave normally in mid-July because it always takes about 4 to 6 weeks for them to verify applications, because they have to verify all those grades that you entered with your transcripts and everything else, including like background checks and all that other fun information they have to fill out. So even if you submit it early June, the application's not going to be sent to dental schools until mid-July. And typically from the schools that when I applied and others that I know of and I've talked to, they don't start to look at applications or have their committees look them over until that mid-July time. And then from there, it could be really any time at all, because then they're looking at them on a rolling basis and they're looking at them as they come in and as they get them. So if you apply really early, you could start to hear about interviews in mid to late summer, mid to late summer in terms of like when you'd be heading back to college. If you apply a little bit later and maybe you're submitting in August, early August, late August, then it could be pretty soon after the fact of when you submit your application, just in making sure that you're accounting for that 4 to 6 weeks of ADSAS verifying your application before they send it out to schools. But I'd say you'll probably would have the longest wait if you do apply earlier, just because you have to account for the time of ADSAS and then the schools getting their committees together. But after the end of June, it could be any time at all after you submit your application.
All right, thank you so much. That's all the time we have for our questions. Thank you so much for submitting so many wonderful questions. If you are looking for more pre-dental focused learning, sign up for any of our upcoming pre-dental webinars. Or if you're looking for the live ASDA learning experience, register now for National Leadership Conference in Chicago. Registration is open until the 15th. We'd like to thank you for participating in tonight's program. I'd also like to thank our speakers, Hillary, Katie, Brian, and Jack, and all those who contributed questions via Facebook and Instagram. This program was recorded and it will be posted on ASDA's website and emailed to all participants. Complete your evaluation by Friday and you'll be registered for a drawing to receive an ASDA water bottle. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Register for next week's Wednesday webinar or join in on social media throughout the month and enjoy the rest of Pre-Dental Month. Thanks so much and have a great night.